Something important is happening in Geneva in a few weeks' time. What is it and why is it important?
Well, it's extremely important because cigarette smuggling is an international problem and it has to be tackled internationally. So in Geneva there will be a second round of negotiations to negotiate a new treaty to tackle cigarette smuggling and to decrease cigarette smuggling around the world. My name is Luk Joossens. I'm Senior Policy Advisor of the Framework Convention Alliance.
We've looked into a new brand that's out here called Jin Ling. What is Jin Ling and what's different about it?
Well, Jin Ling is a cigarette brand which is legally produced in Kaliningrad, Russia, and is destined for the smuggling market in Europe. So it's amazing that a cigarette brand is Russian with a Chinese name, legally manufactured, and is completely destined for the illegal market.
How serious a problem is it?
It's a serious problem because it was a minor brand a couple of years ago and now it's among the most seized cigarettes in Europe.
Why is it a special problem?
It's a special problem because it's a legally manufactured cigarette, and so we expect that the Russian authorities, which in fact ratified the World Health Organization on curbing tobacco control, and which recognize that illicit trade is a serious problem, that they should tackle this problem also.
What should the Russian government do now?
The first thing is to collaborate with European authorities to see under which conditions the cigarette is being manufactured, to whom it is being sold, and how they can reduce the supply. Because one of the lessons we learned over the last 10 years, if you stop the supply, you resolve to a great extent cigarette smuggling.
You're one of the people we regard as the grandfather of the whole expose of big tobacco cigarette smuggling. You produced a seminal piece of work in the 1990s. Very briefly, say what you did in the 1990s.
Well, I'm from Belgium and I discovered that cigarettes came to Belgium in transit. 70 billion cigarettes. Happily, they were not destined for the Belgian market, but they went in transit. Transit means no taxes. And in fact, they were destined for the illegal market, such as in Spain and Italy. And it was done with industry complicity. As a result of the whole situation, European authorities sued the tobacco companies. And as a result of the lawsuits, the level of smuggling went down dramatically, both in Spain and in Italy.
One of the things you did was a simple piece of arithmetic with import and export figures. Say about that.
Well, we looked at cigarettes which were exported globally. Normally when you export cigarettes, you expect that it will be imported in another country. But then we saw that there was a difference between 350 to 400 billion cigarettes which never entered in the country of import. So they disappeared during the international transport. And in fact, they were destined for the illegal market. And 400 billion cigarettes, that's quite a lot.
How much is it worth?
Well, we make now estimates that the smuggling market, illegal market globally is something like 40 to 50 billion dollars.
Every year?
Every year.
Who's behind the smuggling market?
10 years ago, it was clearly the industry. But things have evolved, there have been the lawsuits, they have been reacting to the lawsuits. And now we have the impression that everything is becoming more complex. You have the growth of counterfeit trade, you have the small-scale smuggling from countries where prices are very low to high price countries. So everything has become more complex.
Some of the big tobacco companies have done deals. Could you tell us about the deals and what you think of them?
Well, as a result of the lawsuits of the European Community, there has been 2 agreements signed, legally binding agreements between the European Community and Japan Tobacco and Philip Morris. The main aspect is that if there's a dispute, you can go to court and enforce the agreement. The second thing is when cigarettes are seized, the companies agree to pay all the taxes back and even after a certain amount, 5 times more. So these are serious payments. And as a result of the lawsuits and consolidated by the agreements, we have the impression that those companies have changed their attitude and behavior, at least in this region of the world.
What about in Africa? Have the companies changed? Have Big Tobacco changed its practices in Africa?
We have no idea what they are really doing over there, and we have the impression that the companies are still involved. So it's much more difficult to have a clear picture on what's happening in Africa. So what we see is when authorities react, they change also. But when the governments are weaker, they may adapt to that new situation.
Particular question, are there global tobacco production oversupply issues associated with the country of Paraguay? Tell us about Paraguay.
Well, Paraguay is a country of 3 or 4 million persons, and the legal sales is something like 5 to 6 billion cigarettes. However, they produce something like 70 billion cigarettes, and it's destined in the first place for Brazil, which is a big market, for Uruguay, for Bolivia, Argentina. So it's the major supply of the illegal market in Latin America and a major concern for that region.
What's the significance of China for the situation of cigarette smuggling in the rest of the world?
Well, China is, in the first place, a big problem for China itself, because besides the fact that they consume 2,000 billion cigarettes, they're also producing lots of counterfeit cigarettes for the local market, and then there are the start of the supply of counterfeit cigarettes all over the world. When we see, for instance, in Europe, we see that most of the counterfeit cigarettes are coming from China, and this is also true for other parts of the world. So they are the main producer of counterfeit cigarettes.
Look, you've given a lot of your life to the business of fighting the tobacco companies. Why? Why does it matter?
Well, I'm fascinated in how this big industry become linked to criminal organizations and been involved in so many of these illegal activities. I find it fascinating how it could be possible to be done, and certainly coming from American companies which say that they want to fight terrorists, criminal organizations, and then you see this link with these criminal organizations. I find it fascinating, and we have to do something about it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.